Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us to hear about Michigan Task Force 1's EMAC Playbook. I'm Angela Copple, the EMAC Program Director at the National Emergency Management Association. I'm joined today with Kevin Lyne, the Operations Section Chief for the Mutual Aid Box Alarm System, or MABUS, Chad Whitehead, Leader, Trainer, and Exercise Coordinator for Michigan Task Force 1, Chris Martin, Task Force Leader and Special Operations Chief for Michigan Task Force 1. Next slide. EMAC, or the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, is a nationally adopted mutual aid agreement that enables members to share resources, personnel, equipment, commodities, and services with one another during governor-declared emergencies or disasters. Next slide. There are 13 articles of EMAC law which set the legal foundation for how EMAC works, such as who is legally responsible for implementing EMAC, member responsibilities, license reciprocity, liability protections, workers' compensation, reimbursement, and more. Next slide. EMAC's 13 articles have been passed by the legislature and signed into law by all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Northern Mariana Islands. The U.S. Congress passed EMAC as Public Law 104-321 in 1996. By law, EMAC is implemented by the state, territory, or district emergency management agency on behalf of their governor. As you can see, EMAC is very active. Since January of just last year, over 15,000 personnel have deployed through EMAC. If we look at just the search and rescue through EMAC over the past 12 years, there have been 218 missions with over 6,000 personnel deployed. This slide shows a breakdown of which states have requested search and rescue resources and how many resource requests each had. The highlighted states identify search and rescue missions in 2024 and 2025. This slide shows which states have provided search and rescue resources. Again, the highlighted states show which ones have provided search and rescue resources in 2024 and 2025. The most commonly deployed search and rescue missions are Type 1 Swiftwater, Type 3 Swiftwater, Type 3 Urban Search and Rescue, and Aviation Search and Rescue. It is no great surprise that the most common incident for search and rescue deployments is hurricanes. I am very excited today to have Michigan Task Force 1 here to share their experiences and expertise on deploying through EMAC. Chad and Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Angela, for the introduction. Pretty humbling, certainly. We consider ourselves probably one of the younger teams on the block, if you will. There's some really great teams out there, state SUSAR teams that have been working alongside the FEMA teams for quite a while. And we just try to glean some opportunities from them and best practices. And we're always looking for solutions to make us better. So it's pretty humbling being a part of today, and thankful just to share a few things. Again, some of these have been applied over the last few years, and we just try to use each opportunity when we travel out of state or deploy out of state to try to get better, just like all of you do. So I'll just kind of start off. Next slide, please. This was our original request here to share a little bit about our North Carolina deployment. We were fortunate enough to deploy last year through EMAC 3 times to Texas in May, South Carolina in August, and then North Carolina. Certainly this is the one we're going to talk about, one of the largest in response to Tropical Storm Helene as it came across through Florida and then up and through the Gulf states or the eastern seaboard there. So we'll talk a little bit about that operationally. I'm going to let TFL Martin talk about that in a second, but I'm just going to talk about some of the best practices, the things that we've changed, things that we've updated, processes that we've modified in order to improve getting out the door on an EMAC request. And what I can, and I didn't put it in here, but probably most notable would be I can't overestimate the relationship with your state EMAC coordinator. And that falls, like in most states, it falls with our Emergency Management Homeland Security Division, which it was embedded in part of Michigan State Police. And we have a really, really fantastic relationship and partnership with the EMHSD in our EMAC coordinator in that group there. And I can't talk enough about not only their willingness but the work that it takes to get there. And over a period of 3 or 4 years, as we started initially in 2017 was our first EMAC deployment as a team, It was a long mobility exercise really for us, and so we learned a ton from that opportunity. We didn't really get a lot of work and wasn't involved in the actual response. Once we got into Florida, we were turned around pretty quickly because of the number of teams that were already in theater and in play. But for us, we learned so much from that event, and a lot of it led to the relationship that we have today with our EMAC coordinator, them understanding us understanding the whole process and the submittal back to the requesting state, how that works. And then through that, working with our state AG here, we were able to smooth out all those issues, have a memo of understanding with the state police and EMHSD. So all those things now that we've put into play and continue to work that relationship, we now have after actions after every EMAC deployment. How can we get better? How can we speed up the process? And so I would say that's the first thing. The second thing that has really helped us get out the door and sped up, if you will, or close the time frame, is we all know we can't make up time on the road. For us in the Midwest, Michigan as an example, whether it's Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, the resources requested typically are going to hurricane or tornado type events. And therefore, if we talk about the southeastern states, which typically see a lot of hurricane activity, it takes us many hours to get there. Travel time could be anywhere from 12 to 16 hours, 24 hours to Texas. So the faster we can get out the door, the quicker we can get close to in theater, because we want to be there, as soon as that event pushes through, to be of use and help the local residents, right? And be part of that response effort early on. And that's hard to do in Michigan sometimes because of our travel distances. But on the other side of the coin is that most resources are being held in states waiting for that event to take place. And so therefore they look for some of these Midwest teams to come down and help. So we're very thankful for the opportunities. But the other thing I would say to that, what's really helped us, is we have all of our MRPs loaded into the mass system within EMAC. That was a huge win for us. It really speeds up the time frame because any requesting state can automatically see what's in the system. And we price it out based on our experiences. We know exactly what our costs are, right down to the personnel costs, which we'll fine tune that, but it gives a snapshot of what the total cost would be for either a 10-day mission package or a 14-day mission package. And those are loaded into the mass system. We currently have all of our EMAC MRPs loaded. We have state MEMAC responses of the task force, and it's broken into smaller components. But in terms of EMAC, Angela just pointed out, we have a Type 1 swift water, Type 3 swift water. We have a Type 3 task force and a Type 3 task force with water capability, and those are in the mass system. And how we built it out is we built it out in an average of personnel costs, so that there's, as a Type 3 as an example, 35 plus 45, and so 10 in support is a total of 45 packs or 45 personnel. So we have that listed out, and that allows us very quickly to send that package to a requesting state. Once we know we can roster, we'll let our EMAC coordinator go ahead and respond. They'll send that package that's already in the mass system to that state, with the caveat knowing that we will fine tune the personnel listing based on the roster and the actual hourly and overtime wages. So we maintain that as well. So the roster, again, it's an average roster, but it still gives that state requesting state a very close snapshot. Anyway, that for us was a big win, putting everything in the mass system, and we don't have to replicate and produce that every time to send to a state. It's already there and present, and we just tweak it once we know what the roster is going to be, and send that back to the state for the final approval and signatures. So the next part that we've made some big improvements in is our notification process. We use, over time, we've used different tools, and now we've settled into an application we call Connect Rocket. And that Connect Rocket application allows us to push out notifications to our task force, whether it be an advisory, an alert, whatever it may be. And it allows us to poll our members as well. So when we push out an alert for a particular deployment based on type of deployment, we can choose the groups, whether it's just going to be our water group, whether it's going to be the entire task force for a Type 3, whatever it is, we can push that out through Connect Rocket. And that talks with our records management software automatically in D4H. And so they both talk to each other. So it's really simple to use. And we include polling in that. So automatically our members can say yes or no. Can you respond or deploy for the next 10 days or 14 days based on location? If we include travel days, We typically will include two travel days on each end for a maximum mission time of 14 days or 10-day package with no overnight accommodations based on travel distances. So we do both of those within Mass, meaning we have a 10-day package in Mass and a 14-day package in Mass for each of those MRPs. So that polling has really helped us improve and speed up the process, knowing if we can roster, because as soon as we say, yes, we can roster 35 or 45, or we can roster 18 to 20 for a Swiftwater, as soon as we have the numbers in polling and we see that, then we can go ahead and let our EMAC coordinator know that we can go ahead and push out. We can respond that yes, we can deploy if needed. Let that requesting state know. So that's really helped us. The other thing is that we do, as soon as we have a request from our EMAC coordinator sees a request in the system, they'll contact our leadership team in the task force. We enter into a Zoom meeting right away, and we begin the process. We make assignments, and we keep a Zoom meeting open as each of us, our TFLs, our program manager, we're busy. One's going to push out the notification process. One's going to start our workbook. One's going to start reviewing those that have responded to the polling, making sure they have a medical update. So we go back to our records management system, making sure they have a medical, making sure that all the qualifications are up to date before we actually roster them. So we have different assignments based on our position, but we keep that leadership Zoom meeting open, and we work in the background for the next, could be hour and a half initially. It takes us about now, we really would like to roster within 30 to 45 minutes, meaning we can contact the EMAC coordinator and let them know here in the state, yes, we can roster that team or that request. So that's a big win for us. It used to take us several hours. Now we've kind of got it down to about 45 minutes. So because it takes time for each of our members to talk with their departments, get their approval from their fire chief, make sure that they have child care taken care of, you work with their wife or spouse on whatever arrangements. That takes a little bit of time, but our members know the urgency, and each of them, we've really tried to, force them into creating a process in their own fire department of the checks that they have to go through to get the approval, and that's really helped us. That narrative, pushing that out, has really helped us speed up that. We also have a log support group that goes to our task force mobilization center ahead of our deployment. That helps us get out the door a lot faster. They start to streamline everything once they arrive. This log support group is really instrumental in getting things lined up, some final equipment stowed, etc., prior to our deploying members arriving at the mobilization center. So that's been a big win too, is adding that work group in prior to deployment. We went to electronic mobilization medical forms. One of the biggest holdups we saw through really exercising as well as EMAC deployments was once our people respond to the mobilization center, there was a big lag and a holdup at the medical check-in process. There's a long line, sometimes 10 or 12 people deep in this medical check-in process. So we decided to, what could we streamline? And we created an electronic mobilization form that's a Google form. They fill it out as they're arriving or prior to the arrival of the mobilization center. And that Google form reports into a Google sheet and basically has all the information, answers all the questions on that medical form electronically. So once we do that, all our members need to do is go to the table, they get their temperature checked right away, make sure the rest of the form has been filled out in the Google sheet, making sure that each of the questions had been answered, and then they're signed off by medical, either yes or no. So it's really sped up that process. We no longer have those long lines at the medical check-in because they're just verifying the information and taking a temperature instead of them having to fill out a handwritten form each time. So that's really helped us. The last thing, and I'll talk about some of our other improvements later on, but the last thing is our vehicles and trailer DOT checks. We've over time learned what a requesting state needs from us upon arrival into that state, whether that be a 218, all of our vehicles, a listing of our vehicles, license plates, VINs for motors, boats, vehicles, and trailers. We have that pre-populated and done. We usually send that ahead of time actually to our contact back in the requesting state. Usually it's an ESF9 position, or sometimes it's a branch, or sometimes it's a PTM, or a planning section chief that is requesting that. But we've also learned that we take pictures of our vehicles and video of all of our vehicles pre-deployment. So each one of our personnel know that if you're assigned a vehicle or trailer to do checks on it, You'll also include in those checks a video of your equipment, a walk around, or 4 sides to each trailer or piece of apparatus or equipment. And that just goes part of the photo documentation to ensure that, if there's an accident on the way down, it just helps us manage that in terms of was the damage pre or post event and deployment. So, and we do the very same thing on the back end when we demob. We also take pictures and video of all the vehicles, trucks, trailers, etc. But that's just part of our daily, not our daily checks, but our pre-deployment and our demob vehicle and trailer checks. Everything else is digital for us. We have QR codes for our daily checks on our vehicles, a QR code on every door and on the tongue of a trailer that takes us to a Google form for that particular truck. So it really speeds up our truck checks and our processes. So those are some of the things that we have applied to this event that helped us get out the door for North Carolina pretty quickly. On the back end of this, when Chris is going to present next, I'll talk about some of the things we learned from this event at North Carolina and some best practices and changes. So next slide, please. And I'm going to hand this over to Chris to talk about operationally what transpired in North Carolina.
Thanks, Shad. I want to emphasize what Shad said again. This is an honor and a privilege for me to be a part of this. And I want to emphasize that I've had a lot of conversations with other teams, both during this deployment and after this deployment. And by no means did we do anything special that any other team didn't do. So I want to make that clear that we're just another resource that was there helping, and a lot of great work went on. So we did not leave the MOB Center until September 26th, a little bit after 9 p.m. While we do have a streamlined service and we got out of the door under 2 hours, we didn't get the approval till late in that day. So knowing that, our teams, whether they were in their fire station, doing their day job, doing their whatever job they were doing, this was late in the day for them. We made the decision to push for 4 hours. That's about the limit of our fuel, with a driver rotation at 2 hours because it was nighttime. I wanted to make sure it was safe, yet we weigh that against us having to get to where we're going and help out. So we pushed till about 1 a.m. Our individuals, we stopped at a hotel and they got about 3 hours of sleep. We were back out the next morning at about 6:30. Now we're driving in the storm, so a little bit of a delay there, but we arrived at Conover at a little bit after 3 p.m. And as Shad said, our check-in was easy. We had our 218 emailed to our div soup, who also we've known for a while through training. Craig Smith has been around our team, and it was a great relationship. It was an easy check-in because he knew what we were able to do. So early on, I could tell that there still was not a lot of information that they had. All the cells towers were out, a lot of power outages. Our area, our IST didn't have a full grip of all the needs, but they knew there was some significant damage. And early on, they had asked us if we were able to move by helicopter to some location. And I can't stress enough that, our team, every deployment I've been on, and I'm sure it's like every other team, our team is just so flexible. If they're asked to do the most mundane thing, they're going to do it with a smile on their face. And if they're asked to do the most serious thing, they're going to figure out how to do it. So we spent about an hour trying to figure out how we could move all of our stuff in a helicopter. What we didn't know is what the size of the helicopter is, what our weight limits were. So our guys were Googling things, and whatever it takes, we're going to do, and we'll make it happen. But that didn't happen. And what did happen was Burke County had called and said that they have a couple of situations with rescuers that were in trouble, and they needed some help. So we were assigned to Burke County in kind of a quick mode. Left the check-in, and we went to Burke County and worked with their team on a couple of issues that had arisen. And what we realized was that team had been working for 36 hours now. So their leaders asked if we'd be able to just relieve them and take their 911 calls so their crew can go back and get some sleep. And that's exactly what we did for the rest of the night, doing certain missions, cars in the water, helping people out of apartments and things like that. The 911 calls, if you will, that are anything water related. So slide, please. So by the next morning, we met with Burke County Emergency Management again. Their team was back in service, and it seemed like other than some roads and trees that we cleared, that they were in good shape and they no longer needed us. And so by that afternoon, we were released by Burke County, and we were told by our IST to move towards Lake Lure and Chimney Rock in Rutherford County. But knowing that we were told that there was a lot of road closures and it was going to be hard to get there, it took us a while to get there. We had to do a lot of tree cutting just to get to where we were going. And we have finally arrived that evening at the Green Hill Fire Department, which was going to be our boo. And it was already getting dark. And, by this time, my crew had only had 2 hours of sleep the night before. So, again, I wanted to make sure we were safe in what we did. So, as most of our crew put together the boo and helped the fire department with a generator issue and things like that, we met with North Carolina 10 that had worked in Chimney Rock that day. They gave us some intel of as they were leaving of what the situation was, including that there was 4 people that were across the river that they couldn't get to that certainly were a priority as there were some medical concerns. So while we had our boo working, we sent a forward group, including myself, to Chimney Rock to get some intel on what we'd be doing the next day. Slide, please. And that's when we realized how devastated the town actually was. It was kind of a ghost town that evening, but you could tell. There's just a few pictures in here just to show the devastation of the town of Chimney Rock. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And again, this is just an example of what the town of Lake Lure and Chimney Rock looked like. And we knew that the next morning we'd have our hands full when we got there. So next slide, please. Next slide. This is our boo set up at the Green Hill Fire Department. I can't express enough gratitude towards them. They took us in as if we were family. They cooked for us. Anything we needed, they helped us with, including internet, which Shad will talk about in a little while. But, they were just very, very great to us, and anything we needed, they helped with. So next slide. As I said, we had no internet connections, and radios weren't working very good. Cell phones were hit and miss. So we decided we were going to move our forward operating boo right down to Chimney Rock, just so we could actually communicate. We actually picked up a Starlink from one of the firefighters in Green Hill Fire Department, which actually worked well for us. So that helped us out. So as we were leaving the boo, the National Guard showed up with 4 large vehicles and 12 personnel. And I stopped to ask them what their mission was for the day and was pleased to find out that their sergeant in command said their mission is whatever we needed them to do. So not knowing that we had 4 National Guard trucks and 12 people assigned to us, that worked out well. They followed us into Chimney Rock, and as you'll see, we put them to work pretty quick and with a lot of different stuff. So also, we didn't know that New York Task Force 1 was going to be in the area, but they showed up later in that morning with a FEMA IST as well. They also had, they were a little bit more equipped than we were. They had search and rescue component. They were actually an MRP attached to a Type 3 team. So they came a little bit more well equipped, which was one of the things we realized early on is that, this is going to be more of a search and rescue mission and not really a water rescue mission. And the emphasis over the last several years has been to make the Type 1 swift waters a little bit less cumbersome and quicker. And so we were really lacking in some of the things we needed as far as, searching components. We have, some force entry equipment, but just not a lot. So unfortunately, that day, we also had to deal with a nonprofit group that was a little bit problematic to deal with, but we were able to get through that, and that worked out. That took care of itself. So next slide. So as I said, the North Carolina group told us that there was 4 people across this river, which my understanding and one of the downsides is I wish I would have been to Chimney Rock before this because I hear it was a beautiful area. The night before, we actually were able to use Google Mapping to look at what the streets looked like and what the town looked like before the storm. And my understanding is this river that we're looking at here was not very wide, like maybe 30 or 40 yards wide when it was in its normal state. But since the flood that came through there, it actually pushed so much stuff down there and so much water down there that it actually made a much wider river and took out a lot of structures on each side. So our first mission was to identify and relocate the 4 people on the other side of the river. And so we set up a movable control point. And this is where I go again with the National Guard. They were just so easy to work with, so eager to work. Some of them were actually Swiftwater trained. All of them had life jackets, so we put them to work as our haul team, downstream safety, and we built the system to go back and forth across the river, which we ended up using for a couple of days. Next slide. It's just one example of how we were bringing people and pets back over, in the teamwork between the National Guard and our people worked out very well. Next slide. This is New York's team. They actually came with canines and search cameras and structural search components. So as soon as they arrived and we knew we could, put their dogs to work, we put half of their team on the other side of the river with our team to search downstream at all the structures. We were getting calls of people that needed some help, so that worked out well also. Next slide. And again, our type 1 doesn't go with plotters and printers and things like that. So when New York showed up with their IST, we were able to quickly go together and figure out how not to duplicate our services. The SARCOP was awesome, but one thing we had already found out is that the locals were doing what locals do. They were searching, but they weren't marking down what they were doing. So it was causing us to have to research things, and we didn't want to have to do that again. So we developed a plan with New York to divide and conquer, if you will. And because we were using SARCOP and because we had the internet there with Starlink, it was real-time information we were able to show. And then they came back the next day with an improved map of what we had done, and it helped us figure out exactly what we needed to do. Next slide. Couple times during the day, our crews were taken places via helicopters and dropped off to do searches or to remove people via helicopters. So the helicopters, while there weren't enough and they were hard to coordinate, when they were able to be used, it worked out well. Next slide. And this specific picture was very interesting. This is the first person we removed by helicopter. We had an unambulatory male that was up in the hills, and had to cut some trees to get to him and get him to a landing zone. And this picture ended up being shared with North Carolina's emergency management and ended up on their Facebook, which is in a different slide. And it was a really cool picture and a really cool operation. We ended up doing this 3 or 4 more times that day. Next slide. Again, we weren't carrying all the stuff we'd carry with a Type 3, so knowing we were going to be moving some people for long distances, we stopped at the Lake Lure Fire Department and borrowed their wilderness wheel and a couple other components to make that happen. And again, everybody was willing to help with anything we needed. Next slide. This is just one example of some of the things that we encountered along the riverbanks and everywhere else where people were stranded and needed help, and they were hoping to get some attention from helicopters or from rescuers. I just thought it was a pretty interesting picture to add to this slide. Next slide. And again, the Google search the night before of the mapping and what it looked like before was way different than what we encountered. This was actually a bridge that went across the river to another community called Bat Cave, which was stranded. The whole community was cut off because there was no bridges in either direction, and it just one more example of the devastation that these people suffered. Next slide. This is that post that North Carolina Emergency Management put out, and it came back, the pictures we shared, and we could have a long conversation of the social media policy. This actually, all of our pictures go back to the state of Michigan, and they share what they feel they should share, and so it worked out well. Next slide. Just a couple more pictures of the devastation. This police car, thankfully, there was no police officer in it at the time, but we did go back with New York later to secure the weapon that was in that vehicle so it didn't go into improper hands. Next slide. This is just an example of how much dirt was actually in the town. So this is the road. What you're seeing is the actual roadway when the excavators came in and the bulldozers came in. And it might not be able to see that, but that's almost 4 feet of dirt that was washed into the town. So all those stores were filled with 3 to 4 feet of dirt, like you see in the roadway here, and just utter devastation. Next slide. So after 2 days of working in Chimney Rock, we met with Rutherford County's emergency management. We showed them, via SARCOP what we had done. We gave them some input on what, they should be doing moving forward, but it was decided that we were no longer needed. Our resources could be used elsewhere. So we received our orders to be relocated. And so our IST the next morning sent us to McDowell County, and we met up with Indiana Task Force 1 in the town of Old Fort, which that day we thought we would be taking over what they had been doing because they were getting demobilized. So we built a plan with them of what they had done and what we'd be doing the next day. Shout out again to McDowell County Parks and Rec. They put us up in their Parks and Rec building, a large gym with showers and the whole 9 yards. But again, just like Green Hill Fire Department, they were overwhelmingly kind to us. Anything we needed, they went over and above. So after meeting with Indiana Task Force 1, we were called to McDowell County COC that night and given different plans of what they needed us to do the next day. So we were given a mission to meet at the Hankins Norfolk Fire Department and team up with Rocky Mountain Rescue and also New Hampshire Task Force 1. I didn't know they were coming, but they showed up in boats. And so we all merged together and put a plan together again of how to divide and conquer and not duplicate services. So next slide. And by the time we got to McDowell County, things were getting a little bit more organized. They had an idea of what had been done and what they needed done. So it made it easier on us to be given specific instructions of what they needed instead of having to figure that out on our own. So next slide. Just one example again of the shared resources. We had 3 canines from the law enforcement in North Carolina, and these canines were cadaver dogs, and our mission was to locate or try to locate any deceased bodies. They were missing a couple of known victims that they saw get washed away. And so these dogs had never operated in a boats. We've never taken other dogs from other teams in our boats. So this was just one of those things. Again, we're going to be flexible and figure out the best way to do things. So we put 3 boats together with canines and had them search along the riverbanks during that operational period. Next slide. So I will turn it back over to Shad, who's going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the things that we could improve on from this deployment.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So just kind of as we now kind of on the back end of the North Carolina response, just wanted to chat about not only our challenges, some of our weaknesses that we identified, but we'll talk about too, what are some best practices moving forward? How do we solve some of these and some things that we've now put in place in preparation for our next deployment? So again, I have to reiterate that we just feel we're a team that just finally went from crawling to walking. And so we have made the mistakes that we've made, the things that we've learned, and they're really not mistakes, I suppose. It's falling forward is probably a better way to say that. But through our last 10 EMAC deployments, the culmination of each event, because each one is unique, each one offers new opportunities to learn and offers new opportunities to put some best practices in place because they're all so different each event. So again, some of the things that we put in place are based on these challenges and weaknesses that we face in each one. So obviously, Chris alluded to the fact that communications was a really, he didn't overstate that enough probably. It's just the communication challenges the team had while deployed there. Infrastructure was completely gone. You saw that roadways, telephone poles, it's all gone, radio towers. So there was no cell, no data. There was no ability to communicate outside of simplex system, which we use UHF for simplex, line of sight communications for the most part. What it did is not only was it from a safety perspective difficult within our team to communicate with each other in line of sight, especially when we started pushing guys across the river up into the mountain. Sometimes they were gone 4, 5, 6 hours on foot. Everything was done on foot, and we'll talk about that challenge as well. But just from a safety aspect, that was really challenging. We did have a limited number of sat phones, but that sat phones were old technology. We've hence updated and upgraded those sat phones. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we found out that we were using old technology, and that needed to change as well. What it did is it really hampered our efforts from the TFL and planning perspective, the PTM, TFL, and TIS. It was a challenge to try to communicate back with the IST and the Div Soup on a daily basis, given sit reps, new information, updating information, requesting more resources, whatever it was. That was really a challenge until they fell into the Starlink, and we'll talk about that in a second. So Again, what do you have in terms of a team? What's your backup? What's your plan? When this fails, what's your secondary? So there just has to be, the fail safes put in play for communications. What's your primary, secondary, third, and even a fourth option? So we talked about the SARCOP. We use SARCOP exclusively. Every event we go to, obviously most of you that are working out there and deploying now are using SARCOP in some form or fashion during SAR events. SARCOP is a fantastic tool. It has become kind of the gold standard across all the teams, whether you're a SUSAR team or a federal team. It's really great that NAPSG has spent so much opportunity or so much energy in creating that for the larger rescue, search and rescue world. So it's really a really great tool, but you need connectivity for it to work, right? And that's the other side of it. It will upload. You can collect data in the field as a user in SARCOP, but it takes obviously a connection to upload that. So there are some challenges there in sharing information real time to the dashboard, back to emergency management in North Carolina, or back to the div soup or the IST that wants to view that data. Unless you have a Wi-Fi or some connectivity to data, it doesn't get uploaded. So that was a challenge too as well. One of the things that really was useful is our relationship with FirstNet. We have a variety of FirstNet options with our team. We have Sonam. We have 15 Sonam phones. We're probably going to look at going to probably 25 Sonam phones that are a part of our on FirstNet. Those work extremely well for us, as well as our AT&T FirstNet hotspots. We have some of those as well. But one of the things was our relationship with FirstNet back in the state of Michigan. The TFL and plans recognized early on that they were going to have some communication issues because there's no towers at all, data or cell. So we were able to get a SAT Colt scheduled to come in, and within an hour of being at the boo, an hour or two, they actually had a FirstNet SAT Colt in place, arriving at the fire department there and set up. Again, the SAT Colt, unfortunately, was only cellular. It was no data, so it takes satellite to cell, but it was still very, very useful. It's just it takes time to set up. It's not really fast, so it's hard to move. Although they did move it one day and took it closer to our forward operating base that was created from command and control perspective, actually in Lake Lure and Chimney Rock, and moved from the fire department down there. The SAT Colt did do that. They moved it one day, but it takes a lot of effort to move it, set it back up, and tear it back down and take it back to a base of operations each night. But a shout out to FirstNet. They really came through for us, and we appreciated the effort. SAT phones, we talked about that. We updated our SAT phones as well. We have pretty poor coverage with those due to the old technology. I'll tell you what the game changer was, and if you're not in the Starlink world right now, you need to be. For us, it was a game changer. We did not have Starlink. We do have data, a satellite, which is part of our mobile command unit, but that mobile command unit only goes with our Type 3, the larger task force. It's not part of our smaller MRPs like our Type 1 Swiftwater or Type 3s. But it was a game changer for our guys when the local firefighter from the fire department came and said, "Hey, I have this Starlink thing. I just got it a couple weeks ago. Could you guys use that?" And it was like an early Christmas for our guys. It was an amazing tool and certainly was a game changer. And hence the reason we have added several Starlinks now, mobile Starlinks that can be part of any mission ready package. And we've got them Pelicanized, obviously power supply, a separate power supply for those, etc. So, and we also have voice over IP for our Starlink, so it actually acts as a sat phone as well. Gives us a little more coverage. So we have a landline and voice over IP for each of those Starlinks as well. So access issues, we talked about roadways, bridges, and passable debris cover. It took a long time to travel. And so again, understanding your routing, having alternate routes prepared, talking with the IST and your div soup, trying to get a better handle on what roads are actually impassable or cut off. So spending time up front is always so critical, and trying to figure your routing before you get on the road. Even sending people ahead of time to try to figure out the routes will save the convoy a lot of time in the back end. It was just in this type of situation, there were so many roads that were impassable. I'll talk about some best practices too, just with chainsaw work. Limited resources, I think we've retooled a little bit based on what we learned and the challenges we had as a Type 1 Swiftwater. Really like Chris said, this should have probably been for us, although they didn't know at the time they requested swift water, the amount of damage, the horrific, tremendous, logarithmic, exponential damage that occurred. They just didn't understand that probably previous what was going to happen with the hydraulics in these valleys with that water coming out of the mountains like that. And so we would have been in a much better position if we were a type 3 with water capability going out the door because of our tool selection, search and rescue gear differences. Because ultimately what happened was this really turned into a wide area search mission that was land-based. The majority of the work we did, the vast majority of what they did was land-based search and rescue operations on foot, remote. And I know everybody says USAR, but there wasn't anything urban about what we did really there in North Carolina. It was more of a rural or even wildland interface type of wide area search. And so we'll talk about what we learned from that event and how we're going to better prepare our smaller MRPs like the Type 1 Swiftwater and our personnel, how to better perform and set them up for success in that type of an environment. PPE limitations, we also have made some changes. Hip boots as opposed to dry suits. A lot of work that we could have done in hip boots, shoreline work. The type of stuff that we did was that last couple of days of the event, they did some ground searches, but it was in 18 inches of mud, 15 inches of mud. They're walking through with dry suits on, not the best option, just from a cost perspective, but also just overheating perspective. It wasn't really the right tool for the job. So we're going to retool and add a lot more hip boots to our cache in our water support trailer that goes with our Type 1 and Type 3. So that's available, and based on mission profile, we can get those people out of the dry suits. Tracking personnel, we talked about that with the comms issue, so we're looking to solve that with some additional sat phones. Also looking to watch that technology very closely with AT&T, that the Sonims can connect in the future via text and SMS to satellite. That's upcoming, that's being tested right now. As many of you know, you're probably signed up for the free test to test that out. We're hoping that becomes a reality and just an additional tool, because even if our crews in the field are cut off from communications, radio or cell, they can actually SMS to satellite with their Sonim phones through AT&T FirstNet. So we're hopeful that we're going to see that roll out pretty soon. That would be a big win. Everything, like I said, was packed in by foot. That means our med gear, wide area search gear, GPS compass work, personal gear, hydration, nutrition. We really weren't tooled and hadn't given thought about guys being away from a vehicle or truck most of the time. And we train, and like typical responses for most of us, your pickup truck and your gear or your backpack is literally yards or feet away from you. And not ours. And so we knew that once we crossed that river, we started to get up into the two tracks and these roads that led up the mountain with homes, that everything was going to be on foot. And are you prepared to carry what you need with you? And how is it packaged? So we went back to the drawing board, and I'll talk about that, some of the things learned. And then obviously he alluded to the engagement with some authorized nonprofits that were in the area, and the deconfliction that had to happen, which did. And we're really thankful for North Carolina and their continual support of us while that was happening. Next slide, please. So this is a quick stats. I won't cover this. You can read this for yourself, but this is just some of the area that we covered, the buildings that were searched by our team. This is what was logged into SARCOP, and along with the contacts that we made with civilians, whether they were rescues, assists, medical care, whatever it was, during our deployment there in North Carolina. Next slide, please. So what are the takeaways? Well, we talked about the Starlinks. I don't need to beat that up anymore. It's a game changer for us. We have 3 now additional Starlinks that are portable, that can go out with any MRP. So they go with our UAS components, they can go with Swiftwater, they can go with our medical component, in-state, whatever it may be. So that's a big win for us, is adding additional Starlinks. We even have panels on the top of our MCU now, Starlink panel that's fixed permanently. And then of course you can attach to your suction cup any of the panels on a pickup truck, which we have additional attachments for that. We already talked about sat phones. We updated to the Iridium 9575s, are the new sat phones for us, a much better technology, newer version, more ruggedized and drop proof. We talked about the packing list for rural wide area search operations. This was a big deal for this. We have a draft right now. It's kind of going through final revisions. We've spent several months talking about this. We've actually now kind of tested it through training. Is that we want to be able to have a packing list for our personnel. Let's say, hey, you're going to be in a rural wide area search, and they understand this is the pack list. They can go to it. It's electronic. Here it is. This is what I should put in my day bag for tomorrow's mission. What I should have with me: hydration, MRE, food, water, shelter, whatever you're going to be carrying. Change of socks, etc. That's in that your packing list for that particular day. We also had to rethink the type of PPE. And how we're going to modify working around the muddy areas and shoreline areas. We talked a little bit about adding hip boots already, but our PPE, just the basic things that we typically would carry on a Type 3 as PPE, whether it be hand and head pro, steel toe boots, things that we would do more rescue work in. Those are things that a lot of our guys and gals didn't have on this deployment because we went out as a Type 1 water. So you got your water rescue gear with you, not really search and rescue gear for land-based operations or going into structures or checking structures. A little bit different type of work. So we had to rethink the PPE and add that to an overall deployment pack list for our people that are going out the door with now Type 1s. This was a big one. We just finished our mobilization exercise in May. And what we did is we really focused on some skills based on what we learned in North Carolina and people being away for hours at a time, 5, 6, 7 hours on foot up in the mountain. As an example, we know we needed to enhance some skill sets for our people to make them successful, higher level of competence, higher level of confidence to be able to work without communication, to take care of themselves, to take care of a victim or a patient. And so we got back into what we called survival skills. Really, these are just skill sets, not really survival skills, because we know where you're at. We may not be able to get to you until first light, but we know where you're at. So it's not a matter of days, it's a matter of inconvenience of 12 or 24 hours until maybe we can get to you. So some of the things we added in our training was, again, getting back to the basics: map orienteering, taking bearings, using maps and compasses. And so we did a lot of work on that. We tend to focus too much on GPS and not get back to the basics of how to read maps and how to orient in a rural or wildland area. Firecraft, basically fire starter tools, firecraft. Not everybody was a Boy Scout, not everybody was in the military, right? And so we have a pretty big mix on our task force, but we've got some really talented people. We had 5 different instructors who are very talented and really SMEs based on their outdoorsmen. They were in the military, whatever, their survivalist kind of training. They brought to this as subject matter experts and trainers for us. So we had firecraft, sheltercraft, water filtration and sanitation, because you can only carry so much water with you, and SFACs. And then we said, okay, based on this, how we trained our people, and SFAC is a squad first aid kit. Instead of an individual first aid kit, now we have a squad first aid kit that somebody carries as with them. So we also added additional components. We have a small firecraft kit. That's small. We have a sheltercraft kit, which is 1 tarp, some paracord, and then we have a water filtration pump. So those are divided up in the squad, and each person carries different things. But those are additional supplies that we break a seal on a rope pack or a tub, break it open. We can hand these additional supplies out to a squad who's going in to do a wide area search in that kind of a rural setting. We talked about additional equipment for debris and tree removal. We do have some chainsaws available to us on our water support, our Type 1 water and Type 3 on our vehicles. But we really, after this event, cutting 150 trees, clearing roadways in order to get in areas, not only at the riverside, if we want to launch and recover a boat, let's say, but the majority of what we did was really clear roadways just to access for vehicles into areas. I think our crew figured they cut about 150 trees. We needed more blades and some tools to maintain the saws. So we added some additional things on our logistics support truck. We have a logistics support truck through best practice that rolls with us on every MRP now. And that logistics support truck is our log specialist. We can do small engine repair. We have all our tools. We have a welder. We have extra spare tires for every vehicle, trailer, trucks. All of that is on that service vehicle. And we carry now additional blades and tools to really do a much better job at maintaining saws so we can be operational and just keep working. So let's see. Next slide, please. Oh, the last thing on that previous slide, I apologize, was WhatsApp. We use a lot. We've used some different applications and tools over time, but I would say that, hey, one of the biggest things is that we go to a WhatsApp now. Some of you may know what that is, but instead of using Signal or Telegram, we use WhatsApp because it's encrypted end-to-end, user to user, and that encryption, it can be pretty important sometimes, especially during sensitive events. So we've kind of transferred over to WhatsApp using that application for inter-team communication. So we create a chat with everybody that's on the roster, and we can send documents, maps, we communicate briefing times, give updates, safety updates, whatever it may be, whether that can be done from the TFL or TIS or plans team manager back to that WhatsApp on that chat and push out information. So it's a really, really great tool, and I would encourage you guys, if you don't use a chat like that, to investigate that. It's been a very, very useful tool for us and something we've added. We talked about the wide area support gear already. We talked about the mobilizing medical forms early on that we use. It's electronic Google form. We included weight now because of helo ops. That's a really big deal, is that the weighmaster or crew chief of the helicopter or the pilot wants to know the weight and be based on tools, backpack, but also the person. And so we include weights now on each of our medical forms at sign-in, and we've actually added that. So it's a quick reference guide that very quickly planning can look back at their medical check-in form and grab the weight. If we've got a squad that's going to be doing a helo op, we can give them the weight of each person, and then of course we know the weight of a backpack, etc. So it helps speed up that process. We talked about the rescue pack out. Excuse me. We're doing the same thing for helo ops. What should go with you? What should you be taking with you as part of that process? UAS integration, if you haven't talked about it, we have two UAS MT or M30Ts that we use as part of our UAS. It is not part of any typing, both in a Type 3 task force or water, but it is a force multiplier. It is an incredible tool. We begin to use it. We used it a little bit in Texas and begin to train with it. We have placed that as part of our MRP in the special notes section on the cover of MRP, and that UAS is then covered, even though it's not part of the typing. If you put it in as equipment, it will be covered under that deployment as long as the requesting state approves that and understands that you're going to be bringing that UAS capability with you. That way it's covered. But what a great tool for us. Not only oversight, wide area search, FLIR, we have all those technologies. So a very, very useful tool, and I could talk an hour just about that of itself. Another big win was our deployment manager position, getting out the door faster. We can't make up time going down the road because you can't change the weather or traffic, right? But what we can is we can make up time at our mobilization center in our checkout process and our mobilization process. So we really wanted to work hard at that. So we've got a new deployment manager with a checklist now, and we tested that over our MOBEX, and it was really, really well. Emergency communications, we've set up now ahead of time. This was a really good example of I had family members that were contacting us as the program manager and the TFL back here in support, say, hey, I haven't been able to get in contact with my husband or my spouse because there is no infrastructure. So we ahead of time have made some changes now for the next deployment, that we get out a communication even prior to deployment, before people go down the road. We send out an email utilizing the emergency contacts and the host agency chiefs. They receive an email from us saying, hey, this is what's going on. There may be a period of time you will not be able to contact or be in contact and communicate with your loved one, but we'll make sure that we update you. And we do that on a daily basis, but we make sure that they have our personal cell phone numbers, that it goes both ways, so that if they need to contact us for an in-home emergency, they can do that, and then we can get word back down to the team and make arrangements to try to help out with that personal issue back home, support the family best we can back here while trying to bring their loved one back and get them out of the theater or do a change out. So again, we're really being more aggressive on the front end. Samsara, we have a new Samsara system in place post the North Carolina event that allows us to see vehicle locations. So there's an AVL included in that. Driver logs and drive times are also part of that system. It lets us know fuel status of each vehicle going down the road real time. So the new Samsara system for us works extremely, extremely well. And let alone any documentation, all our vehicle checks will now be part of the Samsara system as well electronically. So again, it's a big upgrade for us going to that system. And the last thing was a WEX fleet card. Our fleet cards previously did not work well. We could only go to certain gas stations to use them. We would overload a gas station and be too many vehicles in line. So now we can actually split our fleet up and go to different gas stations or different fueling centers based on location, based on access. We look at Google Map. We look at the aerial photograph to see how big the gas station is. Is there room to move a trailer around? Even before we make those decisions of where the fuel stops would be, our plans people and logs chief are looking at those things. But the WEX fleet card has been a great addition to us. And we can pretty much go to any gas station, any location, and use it. So next slide, please. So this was, if Chris is still on, I can let him speak to this. This is after the deployment. They were demobbed, and they came across this event on their way back in the state of Ohio. And I can let Chris just give you a 30-second recap of that.
Yeah, so the way things go, timing is everything, and we were on the way back we were in the Columbus area. We had decided to stop in Findlay, Ohio for the evening to make the last push of our journey the next morning. But we had just the command unit that I was in, just a pickup truck, had left the rest of the group so we can go ahead and get to the hotel and get the keys and everything ready so when the people showed up, they could get to their rooms. And we were only spread out by about 2 or 3 miles. But as we were on this interstate, we came literally upon an accident that happened. And this vehicle that you see was rear-ended at a high rate of speed. And as we drove by it, I took one look out of the windshield of the car and said to the other guys, I said, "That's not good. We have to stop." And so we pulled over, and luckily, this vehicle, the driver door didn't need to be any extrication tools to open it, but the young male inside was unresponsive, not breathing. So we moved him to the ground. We had radioed back to the rest of our group that carries all the ALS equipment and the other 18 people that, hey, we've got a mission. And next thing you know, all of our water rescue trailers were circled around this vehicle, and people are wondering what's going on. But there's another individual that you see in the picture with the black or the brown backpack. He had some military training and was carrying a full respiratory kit, including bag valve mask, airways, and things like that we quickly borrowed and started breathing for this young man. Started IVs on him, EKG, stabilized him. It was a long response time for the fire department, so we were, because of the traffic, and we were probably there 15 minutes before the fire department even showed up, but we stabilized him. He was breathing on his own. And it was because of the group of where they were that this young man, who I understand is going to make a full recovery, has a long road ahead of him, but would have been dead if we didn't stop and render aid. So it was just being in the right place at the right time. And it's just one of those things, again, by the grace of God that we were there.
Well, thanks, Chris, for that. This is kind of a little snippet. Well, thank you, Angela, but I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Well, Shad and Chris, thank you so much. I mean, every time I hear you guys talk, I learn something new. So that says a lot about the amount of work and effort you guys have put into every EMAC mission. Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Angela. Michigan Task Force 1, Shad and Chris, awesome job on sharing your experiences with North Carolina. My name is Kevin Lyne, as Angela introduced earlier. In addition to my duties in the state of Illinois with the Mutual Aid Box Alarm System, I am the current president for the State Urban Search and Rescue Alliance. I just want to take a few moments to talk a little bit about SUSAR and how SUSAR is supporting the USAR community. In a nutshell, SUSAR supports the urban search and rescue resources that respond both in-state and out-of-state. Next slide, please. So if we look at SUSAR was founded, formally was founded in 2005. If you look at what was taking place in the country back then, you had 9/11 in 2001. There were multiple large-scale sites that took place, not as widespread as a hurricane response, but there was discussion on how state teams can work with the federal teams on large-scale incidents and response considerations and different things. Another key event took place in 2005 with Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina was one of the largest EMAC responses that took place, and that really threw into the element of water capabilities for not just USAR teams, but other entities across the state. So while SUSAR represents urban search and rescue teams, resources around, we don't necessarily represent the FEMA USAR system, although they are part of that system with the locals, regional teams, and state teams. Where SUSAR comes in is really works with those that could be a call to deploy in their own states and can deploy out of states through EMAC. Next slide, please. So, well, I'm not going to read what's on here. So some of the things SUSAR is doing is looking at, SUSAR has a seat on the EMAC advisory group. And as part of that group, over the last handful of years, since there's been large-scale disaster responses and a lot of teams going out, is we're trying to increase the knowledge of what EMAC is and how that works, and just advocating for teams to be ready to deploy out there. One of the other things that SUSAR does, and it's really kind of in conjunction with teams and their ability to deploy, is coordinating what's referred to as the hurricane state calls. When a large-scale event comes in, we don't know about no-notice events, but when you look at a hurricane coming in, there's a lot of preparation that's being done. Those states that are in the path of a hurricane kind of know, based on the intensity of the hurricane, what their resource needs are going to be. So that's one of the other avenues that SUSAR kind of puts the puzzle pieces together to work with the state teams on that preparedness side. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So just to kind of piggyback on what Shad and Chris had talked about with the response, you'll see right now, this is from open source information, one of the hurricane projection cones that came in for Hurricane Helene. So if we look at Hurricane Helene from last year, there's Hurricane Debbie that took place in early July. There was some other notable resource activations with the RNC that took place in Milwaukee with EMAC. Well, that wasn't necessarily urban search and rescue or swiftwater teams or collapse rescue teams or the live find or HRD canines, as we saw with Helene. There's other EMAC requests. So other states, there was, I guess the communication coordination was going on ahead of time on resources and availability. So Hurricane Helene was forming. Again, this was taken a couple days beforehand. You can see the kind of projection, what's going on. And Illinois is not a hurricane impacted state, although it hasn't been. We kind of look at those states again that are impacted, start putting together the resources. They know what the capabilities they have. They anticipate what capabilities they need, and they're looking in how they can get those resources brought in, and those state-to-state resources are taking place through EMAC. So just kind of looking at this, you can see the impact of Helene was going to hit Florida, the panhandle of Florida on that Thursday. If we kind of look at out there, you're going to see on Friday it was going to go through Alabama and Georgia. And again, this cone was taken a few days out, what the impact and twist would be. But we did see that was going to impact North Carolina into the as the storm progressed. And when we start looking at the resources and where are resources, we know there's a finite number of urban search and rescue related resources. And as it relates to that, Angela did talk about the most common urban search and rescue type resources out there was a type 3 urban search and rescue task force, type 1 and type 3 swiftwater teams, as well as some air support. We know that there's other states have different resources in there that they put together. It's just that these are the most common ones. So we look at the states are starting to get ahead of it. It's like, hey, I know I'm going to need resources based on the impact of this. So SUSAR starts coordinating with those states and just provides information sharing on that side. Some little operational coordination of what resources and what those needs are. That information is shared with the EMAC coordinators from the state, as well as the urban search and rescue or ESF9 seats, just on, hey, this is what we think we're going to need. And when you get a storm like this that's impacting multiple states at the same time, you can see a huge demand for an organized system of and defined like EMAC has with the various mission ready package templates to be able to go through that process. So if you could go to the next slide. We kind of look at with Hurricane Milton that took place about 2 weeks after Helene. Again, Florida was being impacted. You start looking at coordination calls, what resources they may need on that, especially in that first wave, which is the urban search and rescue resources, the swiftwater resources, the ones that would fall under the urban search and rescue category. So we start looking at needs. With Florida, a lot of the swiftwater teams, a lot of the USAR teams were already deployed. We look at some of the fire and EMS resources were deployed to other states, and now they're looking at coming back in. So there's a lot that takes place behind the scenes as these storms come through, which is a key thing of being ready, as Shad and Chris had talked about. So if you go to the next slide, please. One of the things that SUSAR does, in working with the International Associations of Fire Chiefs, as well as the FEMA USAR system and others, is we've kind of identified what would be the SUSAR public-facing list of known resources. So we look at, why is it important to know where there's resources? Well, first off, if I am a state, what resources do I have? We know that not all of those are on the mass, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. But what resources exist? If there was something going on, where's my closest type 1 team or type 3 team kind of thing. So there's value to it. But really where SUSAR had worked with others going in the past few years, and this was even with EMAC, is SUSAR wants to work to the teams. That's part of our advocacy is, so if you say you're a type 1 urban search and rescue team, we then put you in contact with your state EMAC coordinator, your state search and rescue coordinator, or your ESF9, is we kind of create that advocacy for, hey, does your state even know you exist? And you say you're a type 3 urban search and rescue team, is we look at the standards that are out there, and to not that we vet, but we just encourage people to be really aware of what those resource typings are. And we work with them, or encourage them to work with their state EMAC coordinators to fill out their various mission ready package templates to get those loaded into the system. So while having a nationwide database of resources is extremely important on that side, if we look at, just take a moment to look at those, especially around the Atlanta, the Georgia area, the Carolinas. And when we go to the next slide, we kind of take a look at why it's important of knowing where resources are, is that this is one of the forced laydown maps that took place with Hurricane Helene. This was taken on the September 25th. And while you talk about the different boxes on the side that talked about where the urban search and rescue resources were deployed to or engaged to, what was also on there in the purple dots, the red dots, and other dots that are on there are locations of other resources. Well, we don't know that they're engaged or available or anything like that. When you start looking at putting together the response side for this, is what other resources are in there. Now, if I'm in Alabama and I'm pulling in-state resources to an in-state event, I'm not necessarily going through the EMAC channel for that. But when we start looking at, hey, if I'm Georgia and I know that Alabama might have some resources available, those might be ones that they work through the EMAC coordinators and maybe do a direct request for those resources because they're aware of it. So the importance of knowing where the resources are is key, and we're working with that. And if we kind of look at just going to the next slide, another example of that was with April, with the severe weather and the flooding that took place in the mid part of the state. This is just another example of the template that the resources, when they're engaged, we're able to, SUSAR's working with the states and with the NASPAC group and the SARCOP that Chris was talking about, and Chad had also mentioned, just on resources and where they're at. So maintaining that common operating picture of where teams are and what teams might be available is one of the areas in which SUSAR is helping EMAC. So let's go to the next slide. So our SUSAR hosts the National Urban Search and Rescue Conference. The next conference is coming up in November in Florida. There's information on the registration there. A huge takeaway is from the 2004 National Urban Search and Rescue Conference. That took place in November. That took place about a month or so after the Hurricane Helene and Milton response took place. And I would just want to go back to Michigan's presentation. Awesome presentation. They had talked about their readiness, their pre-deployment readiness, their lessons learned on that side, what they did during deployment to make things easier, their constant lessons learned and information sharing. SUSAR had several sessions directly related to Hurricane Helene. We had EMAC was a speaker on that. They did some breakout sessions working with the state resource providers and other representatives of the states directly to build out mission-ready package templates so they can be better prepared to respond to an event. Chad had mentioned that you can't make up time on a deployment, and a success of the EMAC system and going through it and people's knowledge of it is that there were resources in North Carolina from multiple states that, because of the efficiency of the system, they were able to engage in an EMAC response across multiple state lines to be in theater ahead of the primary landfall of the hurricane. And you had resources from multiple states that were making life-saving rescues while they were in North Carolina. And that's kind of an example of, as Shad said, that readiness and that preparatory side of things and that constant honing for that. What would have been a success story in 2024 early is Arkansas had worked with SUSAR and with EMAC and their contractor to build some mission-ready package templates. If we kind of want to look at the next slide, please. Going back the last couple of years, SUSAR's worked with NEMA and EMAC on the mission ready package templates specific for search and rescue. These templates, if you're not familiar with those, if you're listening or watching, the QR code on the lower right-hand side will take you to the EMAC website where they're specific in there. What SUSAR did in conjunction with EMAC and the contractor is took on those most popular mission-ready packages that were being deployed across state lines. We looked at the USAR ones, the Swiftwater ones, even the Type 4 USAR with Swiftwater. We looked at some of the collapse rescue teams or technical rescue teams, some states may refer to them on, K9 teams, which we saw a lot of engagement with the Hurricane Helene deployment. So we took those apart. We kind of look at, what is the capability? We align that capability with the NIMS typing. So it's not that EMAC has a different version of what a USAR team is. It's just we're putting all that information from the different standards and things into these mission-ready package templates. The education side, after we went through and updated these templates to make sure it had the right information on it, is we worked with NEMA and their EMAC and their contractor and actually engaged states with the resources, the resource providers, as well as the EMAC coordinators in different states to make sure that they had these mission-ready package templates as ready as much as they can be. And that success story with Arkansas is after this took place with them, and SUSAR was working with Arkansas's resources, their EMAC coordinator, as well as with EMAC, is Arkansas was able to deploy a Swiftwater team out west for flooding that took place last year. And it's kind of ironic we're seeing EMAC requesting some flooding in the west part also this year. So just kind of as we go to the next slide here, this, as Angela talked about, as Shad and Mark talked about working with his state to get their mission-ready packages pre-scripted and put into the MASS system. This is the current laydown of what the MASS system looks like as it relates to search and rescue mission-ready packages. What SUSAR would like to see, and we're going to continue to advocate for, working with teams like Michigan, as well as with EMAC and the state EMAC coordinator, is trying to get as many states that have resources, USAR resources, into the system so that when the state of Florida is looking into MASS for what Type 3 USAR teams might be out there, they can kind of look to see those up front as opposed to going through the general request that hits all the states. So SUSAR is here to work with the teams on that. We want to make sure that we're able to provide the education and the resources available to the teams that are deploying so that they can be successful. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Angela. Angela, thanks for your work that you've done with SUSAR. Thanks to NEMA. And again, Shad and Chris and Michigan Task Force Ones, thanks for your opportunity to share your lessons learned.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Having a mission-ready package is incredibly important for swift mutual aid. I hope that some of our attendees today reach out to be part of the project. If you want to learn more about EMAC, we have some great opportunities. The Understanding EMAC course will be taught at the National Disaster Emergency Management University, April 14th through 17th, December 9th through 11th, and April 21st to 23rd, 2026. You can also attend one of our free online courses available on the EMAC website. Again, I encourage everyone to develop a mission-ready package in advance of what is expected to be a very busy hurricane season. Thank you for attending and have a great rest of your afternoon.